Hey, Coach, welcome to our YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe down below and click up above. That way you'll be notified of everything that kind of comes through. If you're looking to win championships, if you're looking to have a messy basement like this, but a basement like this, go down over and check out tryouts.com for coaches who want to get better. It's the resources, it's mentoring, it's the one-stop shop for basketball coaches. Go over and check it out. Have a great day.
All right, welcome, Coach. How are you today?
Absolutely amazing.
I know summer's ending.
Summer's ending.
Football
Fall.
season's football's coming around. Baseball's ending up. Hopefully the Cubs make the World Series. No?
I actually got back from Chicago.
I know.
That long ago.
I know. People are going, doesn't Coach Collins live in Wisconsin?
I know. I'm so confused when I see that hat. Yeah.
It's a disease. I just tell people being a Cub fan is a disease. It really is. All right. Go ahead.
You're not closer to Chicago than you are Milwaukee, are you?
No.
Milwaukee's 45 minutes, isn't it?
No. So I'll tell the 30-second story on this. My dad grew up in northern Wisconsin in the 40s, and the only station he could get was WGN. First of all, there was no Brewer, there was no team in Wisconsin, and he got WGN on the radio. So that's what he
there you go.
That's what he listened to. And then, it's a disease. You pass it on from generation to generation. Like you can't.
Yeah. Well, my son's a Packer fan because I obviously grew up in Wisconsin. So
I know. I won't tell you. I'm going to opening day.
Oh,
at Soldier Field.
Oh, it's Soldier Field.
Yeah, they open up on the 9th or something. I know it's going to be awesome. I'm excited. Hopefully one of my players makes the Bears. Jerice Fountain, he's a receiver. So hopefully he makes it. He's kind of been in and out of the NFL, but hopefully he makes it so you can see him play. All right, so today we're going to talk about the 5 keys to planning a youth basketball season. So what's the first one, Coach? We're going to go through these 5 steps. Step 1 is what?
Just setting your vision,
what framework
is it? Framework for your vision, and your framework for what do you want to accomplish in the season. And I think it starts with, who are you as a coach? Like, what do you believe in? Are you offensive minded, defensive minded? Are you a type of, do you run, or you like to slow things down? I think it's just important to write that down on paper.
Right. Well, and I think it's like I always say, it's who, what, where, when, how, but what do you want? What do you want to be? What is your specific vision? What do you want these young women or young men to get out of the season? Because it's different. Maybe a 2nd grader is going to be different than an 8th grader.
Right.
But what are the objectives? What are the metrics for, is it just that everyone gets to play? Is it that you win your rec league? Is it that, you win more games than you did? Whatever your vision or philosophy is, I think is important to dive into.
Because that's going to set the stage for everything else, the drills you pick, right? The offense, the defense, how, do you even worry about a press depending on what age group you're in? And then even just how as a youth coach, a lot of times you only have an hour practice. What are you focusing on that hour?
Right.
Well, okay, this is what I'm going to focus on because I already set my vision. I know I only have that. And again, the difference, I'm a youth coach, you're a high school coach. You're going to spend a lot more time than I am going to on this, but just even if going through the extras and writing that stuff down is important.
Well, when I would coach my kids, it was like, okay, so I've got 2 practices. I'm going to have 5 practices before our first game. What do I need to have in? I need to out of bounds play. I need a press break. I need an offense, all of those things on top of, making sure the parents know when things are happening, when we're playing, a schedule, that practices maybe will change because, there's a snowstorm, things that happen during a specific season. It's all of those planning things that are, as a youth coach, you're juggling a lot of different things.
Well, and I think the one thing I want to highlight what you just said too is that communication to the parents, because if they know what my vision is, then they're not going to, well, they still will yell, but or complain, but maybe a little bit less because they know, look, I have an hour. This is what I'm going to be focused on throughout the entire season. This is what I believe in. And these are the 3 things that I'm going to teach these kids. Okay.
Right.
Oh, so you're not, why aren't they pressing? Well,
Right.
it's not what I believe in.
Right. Or we haven't had time to put it in.
We haven't had, right. Yeah. Right.
So
they can't complain in the stands as much as they kind of know the direction you're taking the team in.
okay. So that's number 1.
That's number 1.
Number 2 is tryouts.
Tryouts. Yep. Tryouts, evaluations, however you structure yours.
And that's hard.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, if you don't know who you're looking for, because if you don't have your vision set and the type of player a little bit in your head, sometimes we don't have a complete choice, but we do have that. I know in our league, we get a number 1 draft pick. Well, my number 1 draft pick should fit my vision. If he's going to be defense minded, this kid can score a lot, right?
Right.
Yeah. But go ahead. What were you going to?
No, so what I'm saying is there's 2 different types of tryouts too that I've been through. Like I've been through the ones that I have to run the tryout and I have to evaluate. And then there's the ones that I just get to sit back and, take notes. And so I think you have to, there's so many variables that you have to look at. Can they handle the ball? What kind of teammate? So it's so much, I think it's so much harder when you're running it and evaluating than when you're just evaluating. I don't know.
Well, and also what pieces do you need, right?
Right.
When you're assembling a youth team, and if you do have a draft, sometimes, but sometimes coaches don't. They just, here's your team. You get this, you get what you get.
Right.
But let's assume that you get to pick a little bit, right? You have some determination on what that team looks like. I don't know about you, but number 1, I'm picking someone who can handle the ball. Period.
Yes.
Even if they're not a great shooter, the youth level, if they can get the ball across half court, that's a plus. Number 2, I'm looking then and like, okay, I don't care if the kid sits in the corner, but man, he is lights out shooting. Right now, obviously, it's nice to have a ball handler and a shooter, right? That can do everything, but a shooter, somebody that can play defense really well. And then sometimes there's size, right? You kind of want them bigger kids, but again, that always doesn't work out that way. But a couple of people that can handle the ball, a couple of people that can shoot halfway decent, and then you're going to have your 8th and 9th kid, right? Especially in rec leagues that, hey, they're just there to have fun, and you get what you get, and you got to do the best to turn them into great players. But I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's like I think the factor is like you have to think about so there's actually 3 options, because you're right, you could be given a team, and then how do you make those pieces kind of work? So even if you don't have a tryout, you have to move those specific pieces. But the younger the age, ball handling is number 1, to be honest with you. As they get older, ball handling is still important, but then other skill sets as far as like shooting and passing and strength and knowledge of the game. So I think it's kind of an inverted curve there a little bit with what's important. But
watch out for those kids who play soccer, because they're not coming to basketball practice. Sorry.
But soccer players always see the court really well.
Oh, they're tremendous athletes.
Yes.
Just in my, I'm tongue in cheek on that one. I just had experiences where I pick them as my number 1 draft pick, but it's also soccer season in the fall, or they're on a travel team.
Commitment level is important too, and it's a little bit easier as they get older to kind of figure that out with the parents and stuff too. All right.
Well, hold on. One more thought on that is, more and more coaches, I hear this, they're picking the kids based on their parents as well, right?
Oh, I agree.
Great athlete,
100%.
Bad attitude for their parents. I'm gonna, prioritize that person. So something to consider. I hate to even have to bring that up, but it's true.
Oh, it's so true. All right. So number 1 was kind of the framework. Number 2 is tryouts. You're figuring out how you're going to run your system. Step 3 or the third key is kind of figuring out like your systems, like your, you know, your offense, your defense, you know, how you're going to integrate those. What's your thoughts on that? And especially, it's going to be different, obviously, between a third grader and an eighth grader, but what's your thought on that?
Well, and it goes back to your philosophy, right? And so what we set up in the beginning, it's really important to pick, if you're in a youth level, let's pick an average youth team, not an exceptional one and not a really bad one. But, most what I've been seeing, you're doing a 5-out or a 4-out 1-in, right? And keep it simple. And I wouldn't worry so much about the offense that you're running, but more about the concepts that you're teaching. Okay, what does that mean? Well, don't be so strict on the rules of a complete 5-out offense. So, we have these,
Right.
I came up with all these ABCs, right? So remember the ABCs, right? Always be cutting and screening. That really is a 5-out off, works really nicely in a 5-out offense. But when that offense breaks down, the kids need something. They need to know what the next step is, and you don't want them to think too much. So after you pass, you cut. So set those rules and make it simple. 3 or 4 things max that you do in your offense.
And I think you got to do that both on the offense and the defense. Like if you're playing a basic man, what are you doing? Are you pushing baseline? Are you, are you no middle? Are you pack line? Are you running a zone? Whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
Again, if you're having 5 days a week practice and 1 day a week practice is different.
That's right. Yeah.
But I think you got to break those systems down. You got to analyze, what I try to do too is I try to take that first practice and figure out what I got. Because tryouts is one thing, and then it's like, okay, we've got some ball handlers, or we've got some kids that have played before. We have some kids that don't play before, or because that's gonna correlate to your walkthroughs, your demonstrations, how you're gonna teach things, how what kind of offense you can run, what kind of defense you can run, how you will break the press. You got to either given the team or tryouts, you got to. I always say that first practice should be kind of a deep dive into your team. Do some passing drills, shooting drills, just to kind of like, all right, this is better than I thought, or this is worse than I thought, just to kind of analyze it. But I think all those systems are important, but you got to know what you got to know the ingredients that are sitting on the kitchen table before you make the soup. You can't just, start making the soup and not have enough onions.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. That's funny though. Yeah, so I go into it with a basic, very high level thought of what I want to do. So literally just did this. Had 8 players, and I ran them through the basic offense, just really basic. And then for me, that I'm just like, do they get it? And let's see what they do. And then that's where I kind of start asking them questions, even at the young level. Obviously the questions are, based on their age level, what you should be teaching them at that age level. But this was 7th and 8th grade. So I asked them, okay, I ran you through the basic set on offense. We did the same thing at defense. And so on offense, I asked them, where do you see the opportunities? Like, where do you see other things off of this? What are the reads, right? And they listed 1, 2, or 3 things. So I want them to think about it.
Yes.
On the defensive side, I showed them my basic defensive scheme. And then I asked them, where are the holes? Where are the gaps? What's going to happen? And I don't mean what's going to happen in every scenario, but just as a generic, at a high level, like, where do you see this not working? And where do you see opportunities and what do we really have to focus on in order to be good, right? Yeah. And you'd be surprised, kids will come up with those answers. Oh God, we really need to be, halfway between our player and the ball on the weak side, or otherwise there's going to be a big gap there. Like, oh, yeah, perfect.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hard to do that with a kindergartner, but
hard to do that with a kindergartner. Yes.
So when we're talking to you, coaches, remember, we're being teachers 101, coach. We're not talking to the kid that's going to Harvard, and we're not talking to the kid, reading 3 grade levels below where they're supposed to.
And you're not going to run an offense in kindergarten. So you're going to run concepts in kindergarten.
That's a whole.
After you pass, you cut.
Yes, that's another podcast.
That's another podcast. That's right.
All right. Number 4. So that was framework, tryouts, offense, defense, kind of your systems.
Yeah.
Number 4 is probably what we get asked the most often about, which is practice planning. I know you're the guru with practice planning. What's your thought on that?
Well, it boils down to, obviously you have to have all of those things set before you know what you're going to do, right? Because otherwise you're not going to be able to put a good practice plan together. But I think off of that, you kind of want to understand, think about the design of think about the elements in a game, right? There's offense, defense, there's transition to offense and transition to defense. And you have to cover all of those 4 things.
I love that. Yes.
Yeah. And if you cover all those 4 things that's how you should schedule your practice plan. And then within those blocks, then you break them down into drills. Then those drills, 5 to 8 minutes, right? And then you got to back and do I have a 60-minute practice once a week? Do I have 2? Do I have a 90-minute practice? Whatever it is, then you can time those appropriately. And this goes back to your philosophy. Well, you know what? I'm a big transition to offense guy, so I'm going to spend a little bit more time on that, right? So I'm going to have more minutes spent on that. Or I'm a really big defensive person, so I'm actually going to spend more time on defense than I am on offense. Does that make sense?
It does. It's and there's a nuance to it a little bit.
There is. Yeah.
There is.
Because... Well, and I think that coaches take it for granted too. Like the practice plan is the most important thing you're going to do all season.
It's unbelievable. From a teacher, from someone that's taught for 36 years or whatever. I lost count, to be honest with you. But it's like, if I don't have a lesson plan, I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
It's bad news, man. Like, and I'm teaching, 17, 18-year-olds. It's like, I got to have a plan. Like,
that's right.
What I'm, and I'll give you a hint on practice planning for the youth coaches that are listening. It's better to have more than less.
That's right.
Because I can always do it the next practice. I can always do it the next class period. I can finish it tomorrow. But the worst is when you get done with everything you have planned with 20 minutes to go in class.
Or I would say is, well, something isn't working.
Right.
And you're into it 2 or 3 minutes. You're like, okay, this is on me. I need to go back to the lab and figure this out because it's not translating. They're not getting it. I better have something else in that spot. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's better. It's like, I always come in with a couple shooting drills, or I always come in with a couple things because, it's, I hate to use the word pivot, but you got to pivot. You got to monitor and adjust. You got to monitor and adjust is what I learned. I learned Madeline Hunter when I learned teaching. You got to monitor what's going on, and then you got to adjust it. And both of those things happen. All right. So that was number 4 is practice planning. Number 5, the last one, it's kind of game management. And I think of game management as before the game, during the game, and after the game. What's your thought on that, Coach?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think all of those are 3 very important keys to having a successful season and managing the game correctly. It's funny, my team, the last youth team I had, I said, hey, show up an hour before the game. They all kind of groaned at me a little bit, and I'm sure the parents were probably in the background groaning a little bit too. But 2 things I knew. One is they still were going to be late, right? So if I said show up 30 minutes before the game, then they're showing up 15 minutes. So if I at least said an hour, they'll at least show up 45 to a half an hour before the game.
Right.
That was important, not only for me, because then I knew how many people are actually going to be playing that day, but also for the kids. It settles them.
It does.
They get those pregame jitters out prior. They get time to be with their friends and talk, and I get time to communicate and maybe work out any last minute questions.
Right.
A lot of lessons taught in that pregame.
Oh, right? It's the warm up. well, first of all, physically, it's important. From someone that's getting older, it's like I got to loosen.
Don't put your old body in those
I got a
young
little
kids.
plantar fascia walking to the red line and to jump on the L. It's like I walked in my sandals. I should not have done that. I'm stretching my plantar fascia or whatever it is on the bottom of my foot. But anyway, but you got to stretch. It's like all that. I think it's important physically. I think it's important mentally. I think it's important for the coaches, all of that. You know, it's more of that connection. And then that leads into the game part of it.
That's right.
Where now I have their attention for timeouts. I have their attention on substitutions. I have their attention on, you know, how we're kind of running the bench and, you know, how the rotations are going in the middle of July or whatever we're doing or whenever we're coaching our youth team. And then
tell me about a timeout though.
What?
How do you manage a timeout?
How do I manage a timeout?
Yeah. What do you say? So, and when do you call it? When are you thinking about calling a timeout? What do you do? What do you say in that timeout?
Yeah, there's a couple things. I usually take 15 seconds to gather my thoughts if it's a full timeout, which is a minute. And then I'm kind of reading the specific situation at that point. You know, am I calling it to change momentum? Am I calling it because we're doing well? Am I calling because we need a rest? Because I have 6 people and no one else has showed up and we're all tired. So there's different reasons for the timeouts. But then I have read that at most 2 things, ideally 1 thing in the timeout, but at most 2. And the most important one should be the last thing they hear when they're walking out of the timeout. Because that's what they're going to remember. It's TikTok, people. It's TikTok. Their attention spans. But so if it's like getting back on defense or blocking out, let's say one of those things, I'm going to say that to them more than 1 time, and I'm going to definitely say it to them at the end and as they're leaving. But that's kind of how I run my timeouts. I think timeouts are you know, there's a pivot there. It just matters how, you know, what's going to happen. And then what about post game? What are you doing post game, coach?
So post game, I have the players recognize something that another player did, because I think that again talks about being a team and they're not focused on themselves; they're focused on someone else, and say, giving a gift, right? Calling, so that's one thing, and I do a quick recap, and it depends on the level, right? Again, your 3rd grade. I still do that exercise. Hey, whose game did you like and why?
Right.
And why did you like it? And then I'll say a couple positive things and say, hey, okay, next practice, we need to get a little bit better at, X, Y, and Z.
I sometimes I sometimes at the youth level even grab the parents and say, hey, let's come in. Let's talk about, remember, we have practice on Tuesday and we have this. And remember, it's like, it's the community that we're trying to build. We're running out of time here, Coach, but let's talk about Coaching Youth Hoops Masterclass. I want you to dive into that.
Yeah.
And how that's related. Let me go through the 5 things we talked about.
Let's do it. Yeah, 3
framework, right? We talked about tryouts, we talked about offense and defense, or kind of planning it out. We talked about practice planning, and we talked about game management. Why are those important, Coach?
Well, yeah, and this is how you're going to kick off your season and do it right and have a successful season at the end, looking back. But we just give you a glimpse. There's a lot more detail that goes into planning a season.
Yes.
And that's why we decided to put the Masterclass together. And you can go take a look at it at Coaching Youth Hoops Masterclass.com. Again, Coaching Youth Hoops Masterclass.com. We're going to dive deep into each of the 5 subjects we just talked about. You're going to have you'll have access to worksheets, so you can create your vision. We're going to show you how to create a practice plan, how to create drills within that practice plan. Basically, everything you need to
get ready for the season.
Off.
And I'm excited because a couple of those topics I'm going to get in front of a whiteboard. And coach in front of a whiteboard. Coach in front of a whiteboard.
Look out.
Pretty cool thing. Let me tell you. not sitting in my office behind all my Disney stuff. I'm going to be in front of a whiteboard, kind of
That's
helping,
right.
you know, and Coach and I are going to kind of batter back and forth and talk about some specific things. But
Well, and I think what's important too is how we broke it up. It's over. We didn't want to, you know, you can take it all at one time, but it is over 5 days, 30 minutes to 45 minutes max to do each exercise. So it's broken, or you could, like, you know, take a Saturday and sit down and do the whole thing. But we wanted to make sure that, you know, you can get through the exercises in a limited amount of time. Again, remember, this is for youth coaches.
Yeah.
You know, if you're, you know, kindergarten through 8th grade, you know, 6 through that 14 age group, you know, we don't go in depth, you know, go to, you know, like you might do at the high school level to
That's
that
teach
level, but
hoops. That's teach hoops.
that's teach hoops.
Yep.
That's right.
But Coaching Youth Hoops, masterclass.com. I will put the link down below. So if you're listening to this or watching this or doing whatever, I'll put the link down below. But Coaching Youth Hoops Masterclass, we're limiting it because Coach and I, first of all, are 90 days away from our basketball season starting. So we can't take 6,000 people into this. So we're going to limit the number. So Coaching Youth.
Yeah, we want to be there to help you.
Yes.
Right. So you can be there as a resource. So yeah, we can only
do so much. There's only 2 of us. There's only 2 of us. All right. Anything else, Coach?
That's it, coaches. Thanks for listening and good luck planning your season. We're here to help.
Good luck. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching, Coach. Make sure you go over and check out teachhoops.com for coaches who want to get better. Make sure you subscribe so you get notified every time we come back on. But you will not be disappointed with teachhoops.com. 14-day free trial. Let's go check it out. Have a great day.